Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we're onto our third video here for the Spectral ONE tutorial series, and we're going through each one of these devices. We've done Proceed, we've done Spected, we're onto Vertx8 this time before we head over to Waveviz for the final video. As usual, we have Woolg's track here, which comes with the Spectral ONE pack. You get the stems and you get the demo video Ableton live set, which I've put together for you guys to have a look at if you're interested. We've got the world viewer sitting here in this spare channel, and my voice is going through here, and it's sidechain compressing the track so then you guys can hear me over the top. Right, we'll start off just by dropping a Vertx8 into the group, which will just basically pop over the top of all the other audio so we can hear, or so we can listen to the entire track. And we've got it jumping around. You can see there's a bunch of boxes. What are all the boxes? The boxes are, if you imagine them as bars on an FFT, so if you imagine like a standard spectral interface, you're looking at bass frequencies all the way through to high frequencies in their frequency bands, and each frequency band is dedicated to a box instead of like a bar graph, which you might see on a standard FFT spectral visualization. So these boxes are both moving from the center, they are rotating, and they're growing in size and changing color. And all of those parameters change based on the volume or gain, or not gain, I guess the amplitude of each one of those frequency bands. So each box has its own frequency band, and they'll be sort of darting around on the screen, you can see. So they're doing a couple of different movements based on the audio. One of them is just, like as I said before, expanding from the center and moving sort of from that center position outwards. And that's just based on the amplitude. But then there's another movement, which is a random movement. So if I turn that all the way down, they basically don't move around on the screen at all. But if I turn this random up, you'll see they start to sort of modulate around, and that just gives you a bit of music. If you don't have a lot of transients or, you know, heavy hits in the sound that you're analyzing, so you might be using like a pad or something without transients, this gives you a little bit of movement in the screen even when there's not a lot of things happening acoustically or I guess sonically. So we can turn that down, and what's this sensitivity slider that I just sort of sneakily threw up? But let's just throw it back down again, and as I move it down, you'll start to see that the little cubes are darting around on the screen. What that's doing is waiting for a transient of an input level. And that input level, once the transient gets over a certain difference, or difference from, you know, previous frames, so basically when it gets a drum hit or something like that, the cube will dart into a new random position. So if we chuck this on the drums, let's just isolate my voice and the drums, which we've now dropped Vertx8 on, you'll see that when the drum hits occur, these little cubes will dance around on the screen. And put a bit of random movement in there and you'll see it a little bit more. And as we drop this down, they'll do a lot more movement. So we can also change the way that behaves by using the slide function. If we turn slide all the way down, that basically stops smoothing the positions, and they'll be very jumpy. So they instantaneously jump from one position to another on those random hits. Whereas if I move the if I move this up, they'll basically move a little bit more gently until they're very, very fluid near the top. And it depends on what kind of look you're wanting. If you're wanting something more erratic or less erratic, this will be the slider that you'll want to use. You've got your standard position and depth sliders. You've got the gain, which changes how much audio input this object is receiving. Then you've also got dim, or dimensions, and this is basically how many cubes do you want to, or frequencies do you want to break up the audio into, and the less uses less processing obviously, and more uses more processing, but you'll also see more detail. So you may or may not want more or less. Somewhere in the middle seems to work pretty well. Of course, as you increase the amount of cubes there are, if they're all the same size, then it gets a bit cluttered. So you can also change the size of the cubes themselves, as well as the area that the entire set of objects take up. So we can sort of make the cubes huge, and we can make them small. So then we've also got the width, and width changes the line width. So you'll see that there's little lines between each cube, and you can change the width there. You can even turn them on and off just with that button there. The color slider here changes the color of those lines between the cubes, and that'll always be based on the palette that you've got selected, which you can change just here. You can also change whether or not the cubes have lighting on them, and if they have lighting, you'll see the shadows that occur from the lighting, and of course it just depends on what aesthetics you're after. That may or may not be something that you want. And of course then we've just got the standard speed and rotation speed modulations, so you can just spin the cluster of objects around at different rates, as you can with any of the other devices in the World series or World collection. So that's the basics of the Vertx8 object. Then you've also got, of course, different looks you can achieve by turning on things like kaleidoscope, which will give you that kind of folding boxes kind of effect, and that can get kind of techy and cool, and create some nice aesthetically pleasing screenshots as well. Yeah, if we turn off the rotation, you'll get a little bit more of an idea about how they move randomly. So there you have it. That's basically Vertx8 and a few of the things that you can do with it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for Wave Viz, which is the final tutorial in the Spectral ONE series. Hope you can join me. Thanks, guys.